Virtual Summit Global Conferences. So before we start the session, I would like
I
to
can hear
give
you now.
a small interaction about you. Okay. So welcome on stage,
I
Dr.
can't hear you.
Hello.
You're muted.
So welcome on stage, Doctor. Hello. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, but I can't hear you. When you said hello, I heard you and then you just phased out.
Now can you hear me? తన వాయిస్ వినలేకపోతున్నాను. Okay. Yeah. Hi, Dr. Nongen Alishma. So, how are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. So, before you start your presentation, I would like to introduce you to the audience. So, welcome on stage, Dr. Inonge Nalishua. Dr. Inonge Nalishwa is a public administration and business professional with over a decade of experience in compliance, organization development, and non-profit executive leadership. Currently serving as a compliance representative for the state of California. She is the founder of Open Gates Academy and the Disability Resources Foundation, leading initiatives that bridge policy, inclusion, and operational excellence to support purpose driven leaders and families of children with developmental disabilities. Holding a Doctor of Public Administration and an MBA, she is also an author and adjunct doctoral committee member whose work advances institutional effectiveness, inclusive systems, and sustainable impact. And she's from United States of America. That's a wonderful introduction of Dr. Rinanga. So, yes, the stage is all yours. Good luck.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Hello, distinguished leaders, scholars, innovators, and change makers. It is an honor to be here, and I extend my gratitude to our hosts for such an outstanding conference with a powerful theme: breaking barriers, building systems, women leading beyond visibility. And now, today, we're laying emphasis on structural influence. We're laying emphasis on structural influence, which is the next slide. We're laying emphasis on breaking barriers. We're laying emphasis today on building and redesigning systems. We're laying emphasis on building legacies. As women, the emphasis today in this conference is women leading the future. Next slide, please, to the third slide. Women leading beyond visibility. Next slide, please. So the agenda for my presentation today is to lay emphasis on women leading beyond visibility. We'll talk about moving from visibility to structural influence. We'll talk about the illusion of progress, which we can also call the illusion of transformation. We'll talk about responsibilities of leadership. We'll talk about the pillars of legacy, leadership, and also future focused transitions. Next slide, please. So, breaking barriers is not about being the first woman in the room. It is about ensuring you are not the last. I'm not seeing the slide. I'm not sure if something happened there. But I will go ahead and proceed. So breaking barriers is not about being the first woman in the room. It is about ensuring that you are not the last. And I'm on slide number 4 right now. So we're ensuring that we are not the last. Correct, that one. So yes, breaking barriers is not about being that first woman in the room, being that first woman in that space. It's about ensuring that you are not the last. That is what we're going to talk about today. For many years, we have celebrated representation, just showing up, just being there, just being represented. We have uploaded access. We have counted the seats at the table. But today, with the theme of this conference, I want to challenge us to think beyond presence. Inspiration without implementation does not build legacy. To break barriers and to last, we need personal growth and development. Before we even get to refining the goals and finding out how we will last at that table, we need to look at personal growth and development. And as was shared in my bio, sharing perspectives from the lens of public administration and policy and coaching practice, with the key emphasis on how we move from intentions to action in order for us to break barriers and to last in the spaces that we enter as women. Today, we need to move from intentions to goals. We need to be consistent. We need to see consistent change in our lives. We need to see consistent change as women. How do we do that? We begin with self-awareness. I like to begin with self-awareness. We have to be aware of ourselves. Why is that? Self-awareness helps us discover what is aligned. It also helps us discover what is truly misaligned. In order for us to be effective as women, we need to begin from the grassroots, and that is self. When we look into self-awareness, we discover what truly is aligned in our lives and what is misaligned. We then can now move to translating the goals into implementable strategies in order for us to break barriers. After we have gone through self-awareness, we now look at aligning our goals. How do we do that? When we're looking at goals and goal settings, which is another topic for another day, but in a nutshell, we're talking about clear objectives, having feasible actions, having realistic timelines. Sometimes we get carried away with passion. We get carried away with the activities that we want to conduct, and we do not lean in to see if it's really feasible, if our activities are even clear, are they realistic in terms of timelines? So what questions do we need to ask when setting our goals? The number one question is this goal implementable with my current capacity? Policies from a public administration viewpoint, policies sometimes fail in implementation stage because we overestimate capacity or we underestimate capacity. And the same can be translated into personal growth. When we set goals for ourselves as women, before we step out to go and build legacies, we must ask, is this goal implementable with my current capacity? The second question I have for us today is, What assumptions am I making about my time, my energy, my support in relation to my goal? If we go ahead and pursue goals, we pursue our dreams without looking into our capacity and the supports that we have in our environment, the support that we have around us, we might set ourselves out for failure. That is what I want us to lean into today, for us to be legacy builders, for us to last in those spaces as women, because we're moving beyond visibility. We're moving beyond visibility. We're building legacies. So we begin with ourselves. Next slide, please. What is the illusion of progress? When we don't begin from a good foundation, we risk finding ourselves in an illusion of progress, in an illusion of transformation. We're now living in a time where women are visible, more visible than ever. But visibility can create an illusion of transformation. The problem there is knowing that many women are not lacking motivation or intelligence. They're lacking clarity, alignment, structure, actionable strategy. Those are the things that we need to look at. When overlooked, we risk going into an illusion of progress. Many women know what growth should look like. I know that because I've been there. We know what growth should look like. Their goals feel scattered, their vision is unclear, their actions are inconsistent, the growth feels reactive instead of intentional, and you know you need to do more, but something is not aligning. They may feel like they are going in circles with no real progress. They may have many ideas, but struggle to implement consistently. They may feel disconnected from their purpose and vision or direction, and maybe from the outside look like they're making so much progress. That is the illusion of progress. Yet on the inside, they're feeling overwhelmed by competing priorities and different life demands. They desire balance, but they don't want to sacrifice ambition or fulfillment. When we stay in that stage for a long time, we create the illusion of progress, the illusion of transformation. Presence without power changes nothing, and voice without structure eventually fades. So we want to progress from this stage. Next slide, please. You need to ask yourself, where am I stuck despite knowing better? What patterns keep repeating? What personal failures show up in my life? Am I experiencing burnout? Is there inconsistency that is showing up? Is there misalignment? These questions are necessary in order to assess the gaps in our personal growth, in order to assess the gaps in personal development, and ultimately in implementation of our goals in order for us to be visible as women and contribute effectively. We need to examine our intentions. From a policy perspective, this is policy design, and we can implement this in our personal lives as well. We need to be clear on what our intentions are as we are pursuing our dreams, as we are pursuing our goals. We need to create the right strategies around our well-intended goals and actions. In public administration, I've seen policies written beautifully, but they're not reaching the recipients. In disability advocacy, I see inclusion statements that don't translate into accessible classrooms, for example. In leadership development and personal growth, I see empowerment language that never shifts from decision-making power. This is what I call the implementation gap. The truth is, barriers today are hidden in so many things. They are not that obvious. They are hidden in processes. They're hidden in procedures. They're hidden in our cultures. And the one that strikes me the most is they're hidden sometimes in knowledge gaps. And that is why self-awareness is very critical. Once we begin to tackle those hidden barriers, we begin to close the gaps in implementation in whatever it is we are trying to achieve, in our personal goals, in our career aspirations, in our business goals, whatever it is we are pursuing to achieve, we must begin to close the implementation gap, and we must be cautious of that knowledge gap. Now, the question here from a coaching perspective, the question is, how do you move from intention to action? Next slide, please. We must ask ourselves great questions. Are we breaking glass ceilings? Or we're redesigning the building? I like this metaphor. As the author of Breaking Barriers, Perspectives on Disability Policy, my research examined the gap between policy design and lived realities, the gap between intention and action, theory and practice. What I discovered was not a lack of intention. It was a lack of execution. I'm not sure if you all can relate. Sometimes we have the best of intentions, but struggle when it comes to execution. We therefore need to design implementation mechanisms that allow us to execute. How do we do that when we bring it down to a personal growth and development stage? We need to build daily systems and routines that help us. And this is where the heart of practice is. This is where we begin to close those gaps. Policies succeed through procedures, institutions, accountability, mechanisms. But when we're talking about personal growth, we translate that through our own personal routines, our design, our tracking and reflections, because motivation alone is not a strategy, but systems are. So we must build these systems for ourselves as women so we can be visible and create impact. Next slide, please. What is the responsibility of women who lead? How do we move from ambition to obligation? If you can think about that for a moment, how do we move from ambition to obligation? The answer lies in our daily decisions, such as what we tolerate, for example, what we postpone. And sometimes it lies in what we procrastinate over. What's the real reason behind that procrastination? What do we prioritize under pressure? All of this is embedded in our self-awareness, but it does connect to moving us from intention to action so we can create effective change and build legacies. So I do have a question for you. If you could just quickly type a response in the chat. Ask yourself this: if my future self were evaluating today's decisions, would they call this effective implementation? And I'll ask that again. Ask yourself this, and I want you to type something in the chat. If my future self were evaluating today's decisions, would they call it effective implementation? We can replace implementation there. We can say, would they call it effective action towards our goals? You can put your response in the chat as we move to the next slide. All right. So the future really does not need more visible women. It needs women who understand systems. And because systems reflect who designs them, that is why we must work on self. We must work on personal growth and development. Are we designing systems that will function equitably long after we leave? That is what legacy is about. So if you're not sure of a response to that question, I don't see a response there. All right. So if you're not sure of a response to that question, you may need to conduct some type of monitoring and evaluation, as we would call it in the policy space. But to the personal growth side, we need to reflect, we need to adjust. Maybe we need to iterate, go back to the goals and see if our intentions are matching our action. That is how we begin to build legacy. We must do some monitoring and evaluation on our personal lives as well. How do we do that? Monthly check-ins, reviews, reflections. We can do this on a personal level as well by measuring our values against our actions. We measure burnout against balance. We measure change against effort. And then we're able to tell what is working, what is not working. We don't blame ourselves in the process, but it helps us identify the real issues that need to be dealt with in order for us to build legacies that last. Next slide, please. Now go really quickly on this slide. So these ones are the pillars. We're looking at the pillars. And these are institutional literacy, strategic execution, and leadership multiplication. And we can move on. Institutional literacy. This is the competence. We need to understand how systems work. Intentions alone are not sufficient. Intention alone does not transform institutions. And next slide, please. Competence does. We must be able to build ourselves. We must build competence. We must understand where we need to go and identify what you need to get there and then seek it. Next slide. And now we're talking about strategic execution. Ask yourselves these questions. Who is responsible? What is measurable? What is sustainable? What resources do I need? What is documented? Because execution is the language of legacy. Next slide. Our last pillar is leadership multiplication. If you're only strong, if they are the only strong person, the only strong woman in the room, then you know that you're probably not building a legacy, you're creating a spotlight. Legacies must multiply capacity. That is what structural impact is. So coaches need coaches too, mentors need mentors too. Influence is what we create if we're in a great leadership space. Like my mentor, John Maxwell, says, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So we must be able to multiply and create future leaders as well. That is how we build legacy. So personal growth there also fails when it's treated as inspiration, but it must be able to build competence that can also be passed on to others. It succeeds when it's treated as implementation. Next slide. So women leading the future must move from representation to redesign. We move from inspiration to implementation. And then we move from visibility to viability. So it must go a step ahead beyond visibility to viability. Next slide. The future does not need more visible people. It does not need symbolic breakthroughs. We need transformation. We need progress. in order to build legacies. We need women who are courageous enough to not only break barriers, but to rebuild what needs to be rebuilt. Because good intentions alone don't change systems, but well implemented action does. Through my coaching practice, women discover, women align, they navigate life with intentions, gaining the skills, the strategies, and the tools that are needed to maximize personal growth and development. And not only that, but to sustain momentum, which is what we need. So this is not a motivational coaching alone. It is practical, it is reflective, and it is action oriented. The coaching itself bridges the gaps. It bridges the gaps from intention to action. It bridges the gap between potential and execution. Next slide. So I leave you with this today. When history remembers this generation of women leaders, may it not only say that we were present, we were seated at the tables, we were represented, but may it say that we redesigned systems, we expanded access, we built leaders, we opened the door for others, we grew ourselves so much because our growth depended heavily on what we would produce, on the future leaders that we would produce. So personal growth in itself is not a luxury, it is actually an obligation. When we grow ourselves as leaders, then we can grow other people, we can grow other leaders. So may they say that we expanded access, we created a way for others, and we built legacies that worked. Next slide, please. So our personal growth journey, and I'll just conclude from there, our personal growth journey draws from public policy implementation. That's the lens with which I took this theme for this conference. And the coaching practice draws from public policy implementation. It draws from leadership theory, from personal growth and development. It addresses the gaps between intention, action, and sustained change. So whether you're in your personal growth journey for your personal goals, whether it's for your career goals, whether it's for your business goals, whether it's for your institution, whatever it is that you're pursuing, this applies because we need to move from intentions. We need to move from just passion to action. We need to move from action and to sustained change. So if you would like to explore where you are, where you want to be, whether it's personal growth, coaching, is it right for you? Or you have dreams that are still scattered, you know you need to be more, you know you need to do more. I invite you to scan the QR code and we can explore the next steps further. But I encourage you as women to work on our personal growth, on our personal development, so we can pave the way for those that come behind us. So this concludes my presentation for today. If there are any questions, I can tackle those. Do we have any questions before I wrap it up?
Yes. Thank you so much for the fantastic presentation, Dr. Inomi. So yes, there are many questions for you in the chat, but I will pick one question for you. So, how can organizations better support inclusion and accessibility?
That's a very great question. Thank you for that. Organizations need to be in alignment. And this is in alignment beyond theory. I've come across most organizations that do state that they support inclusion, they support accessibility. It is documented on paper, and we talked about that in a way in the presentation. They state the intentions more than the action. So in order for an organization to support inclusion, they must look into their policies. Not only evaluate, not only document the policies, but are they implementing inclusion? Are they implementing accessibility? Any service that an organization offers must be accessible to everybody. There must be equity. There must be accessibility for everyone. So if something is stated in a policy and one person can access it and one does not, then we're not truly being inclusive. We're not truly being accessible. For example, even just in our infrastructure, coming from an African background, some organizations will say they're supporting inclusion and accessibility. They have a double-story building in their organization and they don't have an elevator. But they have a policy that states that they support accessibility, but someone that's on a wheelchair cannot access their building. So it can be many things. It can be in improving their infrastructure, ensuring that everyone can access their buildings, ensuring that their opportunities are accessible to everyone, ensuring that there is equal employment opportunities for everyone. That is inclusion, that is accessibility, and also ensuring that people feel heard. There should be a dialogue going to and from, and they must be able to engage everyone affected. Sometimes people will bring policies, organizations will put policies that talk about inclusion of, let's say, persons with disabilities, yet they don't have any sort of engagement with that community. So facilitating dialogue ensures that whatever policies they have on paper actually support the policy recipients. Those are some of the few ways that organizations can better support inclusion and accessibility in practice and not only in theory. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking that wonderful question by Julia Nelson. And thank you for answering the question, Dr. Inomi. So, and please do support and please join our next sessions as well and encourage with the questions. And thank you for joining and presenting a wonderful speech, wonderful presentation for the Day 3 Virtual Summit 2026. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And you would please, if you would share my email as well, because I do see some very great questions in the chat there as well. If you can share the questions, I'll be gladly able to respond. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Thank you.